smile shines as bright as the stars at night. Her heart is as kind as can be. She has the patience of a saint, but if you push her, oh Lordy. A straight talker is Smiley. She's the salt of the earth. Make no mistake, she matters. Catch Smiley's story on a live stream. Oh boy, that girl can matter. Go Smiley. She's Smiley, alright. She's Smiley. Make no mistake why she's here. She's Smiley, alright. She's Smiley. If you're guilty, she'll smell out your fear. Missing posters and stories of heartache and fear. She tells us all of the heartbreaking tears. She can sniff out the guilty from a mile away. If Smiley's on the case, then she's here to stay. She cares about these missing children. She cares deeply about them all. She speaks the truth with integrity. For the truth, she will seek it all. She's Smiley, alright. She's Smiley. Make no mistake why she's here. She's Smiley, alright. She's Smiley. If you're guilty, she'll smell out your fear. Smiley's questions are like a heat-seeking missile. She's going straight for the bullseye. Don't ever believe you can fool her. She's too wise, man, she won't comply. She values freedom like the 4th of July. She values respect even more. If you want to earn a place at Smiley's table, watch the clock, it takes time for sure. She's Smiley, alright. She's Smiley. Make no mistake why she's here. She's Smiley, alright. She's Smiley. If you're guilty, she'll smell out your fear. If you're
Whoops, I think I stopped it too soon. Hello, everybody. Welcome in July 13th. I can never forget this day. This is my firstborn son's birthday. Shout out to him wherever he's at. No, I know where he's at. He's in Nashville, Tennessee right now, celebrating his birthday with his own family. So happy birthday. Shout out to him. And hello, everybody. Because I remember right now I was still in labor, honey, all them years ago. No medicines, no aspirins, no nothing. I let them idiots talk me, a young girl, into having a natural birth. Oh, Lordy, y'all don't ever do that again. Take them drugs. Take them drugs, honey. I'm just saying. Hello. Welcome to Smiley's World. How are y'all doing, beautiful people? All of my beautiful people in here. Hey, Dawn Emery and H. Davis. Janice, hello. Welcome, everyone. My beautiful Millie. Hello, Susie Little. Good to see you. Good to see you. Lorraine Law. Hello, beautiful. Hello. I love to see y'all in here. Brianna's World. Hello. Good to see you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Miss Janice. Glad you're doing great. Glad everybody's doing great. It is fixing to storm out there. I hear the thunder and the lightning. But we ain't got no friends in no low places, honey. We are in the high places right here in Smiley's World right now. Hey, Mamaw. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing fine. And if Wait What comes in here, let me know about Wait What, because I missed her when as I was getting off yesterday, she gave me a super chat, and I just want her to know, in case I do forget now, I had to write me a note. My brain ain't as what it used to be. So I wanted to say thank you to my beautiful Wait What? Wait What? Honey, she gave me a super chat yesterday as I was getting off. I just got off too fast. Joanne, hello, hello. Thank you, Susie Little. Yeah, he said he was missing his family day. He really means he's missing my mom because they was close. And I know he does. I know he does. I told him to hang tight, though. He'll be all right. He'll be all right. So thank you. I'll tell him everybody in here said happy birthday. Happy birthday. Thank you all. I love you all so much. How are y'all doing today, July 13th, 2025? Everybody doing good? Everybody doing good? Many prayers go out. We're going to do a little true crime today. We're going to do some true crime about a 1945 Christmas Eve mystery. Hey, Angel. Angel talks. Angel talks. My girl right there, present. You know what, Angel? You're just a present for being here. Coming back. I'm so glad to see you. I'm so happy. I am so happy you're back. I can't even stress enough, girly. Everybody go over and sub up to Angel Talks. Angel is so sweet and kind. She really is. Miss Millie, you better get on your job and get some coffee and cookies and cream and some things for these great people. And drop Miss Angel's link. What is wrong with you? Where's your manners, honey? I'm just saying. You're waiting on a bad storm there. I was just sitting here. I didn't even know. And I heard. Now, that ain't what it sounds like. The thunder was rolling, though. I was like, oh, my gosh. Really? Donuts, Millie. Susie wants some donuts. Find them donuts, honey. Snap, snap, snap. Got to get them all. You're the best in the Midwest. Well, good for you, honey. That's what you need to be because you are enough. YouTube pays Smiley money, hence why she does YouTube. Without it, her pockets are entirely empty. Ooh, we got a little smart and sassy here, honey. Let's get you up here, Miss Smart. Are you a miss or mister? Woo. Well, let me tell you something. I am the best in the Midwest. Somebody check that, see how long they've been on here, because Smiley don't feel like it today. Smiley, yeah, that's right. Fun fact. Fun fact. Let's see. Hold on a minute. Come on, let's get you back up here. Hold on. Fun fact, honey. I bet you don't do what Smiley does and did for years for free. You wouldn't be here in the South, honey. You ain't busting my bubble, bitch. I bet you won't pull your YouTube open. You pull your YouTube open and I will pull my YouTube open. How about them apples? I do a lot of stuff what I do for free. Free. Because you know why? I got this good heart. It's a thing called heart. That ain't what y'all got. Why don't you just stay up there a while? Maybe you'll make people drop. Drop it like it's hot. Because there's my cash app. I'm as good as anybody else. Hey, Millie, go ahead and drop that list to at Amazon that I just made, honey. Go ahead and drop that. Can you still find it? Not that I need nothing. Not that I need a thing. Woo! Yeah, I don't know, Little Red. We ain't gonna worry about it. We're gonna leave them up there because you know what? Smiley's gonna keep doing what she's doing. Smiley's gonna do all the things she does, whether it be true crime. Because you know one thing Smiley don't need to do? Let's take this idiot down. Y'all want to talk about a minute? And yeah, don't I look, ugh. Is this okay? Because I don't care. Smiley don't have to come up here and say, oh, I'll talk to this. Y'all must be on drugs or drunk. I don't have to be drunk on life. Since we're doing a little bit of true crime and y'all like to bring the drama into true crime, let's bring it, honey, for about 5 minutes. I don't have to say, oh, throw me some cash out. Sebastian's gonna be killed. Throw me some cash apps in here. Throw them. Let's throw this money around. I'm getting my house took away. Come on, I'm getting my lights turned off. Bring it. Where's all the grift stew? Yeah, bring them donations to Smiley. Because I guarantee you when you do, I'll find something for them to go on. YouTube don't pay me, honey. And by the way, send them to my Cash App. Y'all just sit back. Because YouTube takes 30% off. 30% of everything you send. But you don't see me crying about it. Oh my God. And you don't have to see me going back and forth with creators. They talked about me. Let's get on here and make some money because they talked about me. And how about all that kind of stuff? What else? Hold on. Get back down here. Come on. Let's see. Where'd they go? Oh, they gone? Did y'all delete them? Well, what else they want to say? They want me to open up. They want me to open up so bad. You know, then you got yours over there crying. Oh, don't go live at the same time. This one goes live. Sending their pit bulls. Because if you go live, Mama ain't crying, honey. It's okay. Because if you go live, I ain't going to make my 15 cents on YouTube. I just ain't going to do it. I ain't going to make my 15 cents. I don't know what to do with my channel. Yeah, tell them. Cuss them out for me. Cuss them out. That's right. I ain't got to be this big, supposedly entity. Oh, we're all about these missing kids. We're all about these whispering. Oh, Sebastian and whoever it is putting money in your pockets, honey. And then we're going to disappear off the face of the earth. And then we're going to come back and we're going to just make up all these lies. Anybody? I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about at night. Y'all want to get Smiley riled up? Do y'all want to know where I stand clear? I don't give a rat's ass about at night. I don't give a rat's ass about any of these channels. I don't give a rat's ass about none of them. I didn't know none of them before I come on here. I don't know none of them now. And I'm going to keep on hoping I don't know none of them. You want to see something? Y'all know Smiley will show y'all something. Who wants to see something? Put a 1 in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat. You want to see something? I don't give away my sources, but I want to show y'all some mighty fucked up funny shit. Who wants to see something? Thank you, Lisa. Because I'm going to show you anyway. Okay, here. How about this? Hold on a minute. Because you know what? I'm fixing to do a live and I'm tired of people derailing my shit. How about that? How about Crime Time Buzz over there giving all her bullshit? I don't know if it's her fault or not, but feeding into the shit that people give her. You know, wasn't she on there saying, ring, 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 ring. Oh, it's at night. Oh. What day was that? Somebody go find out. Tuesday, 4:15. Who the fuck is that? Oh, you didn't see? Nick the Hat? Fuck you, Nick the Hat. Hey, do you have a link to Katie's Facebook by chance or La Kindlen? What? Bitch. Because, Lisa, he's texted me before when I believed in them too, Lisa. Just like everybody else, Lisa. Now, everybody needs to stop playing fucking games. I'm not here for the games. That's not an invasion of my privacy, Lisa. Why is it an invasion of my privacy? And I'm not fussing at you. Now, is that person that come in here through because Smiley's got things to do? And yes, my time is valuable. I'm not getting paid to sit here and do this. Oh, and let's see. One more thing I want to show y'all. One more. Hold on. Hold on. Because y'all are a bunch of idiots. Let's see. Yesterday's live. Monetization. Ineligible. I can't do that. This one. Ineligible. Red. I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't get paid for YouTube when I play the music and I try to give y'all something you don't want to listen for. If you don't want to be here, don't be here. Bye. While y'all are telling lies and y'all are throwing shit around, like I said, one day y'all are going to throw around too many names, and it's going to be funny when I go, oh shit, I'm on the phone with this person, and y'all look like idiots, but you want to call Smiley an idiot. Bye. Bye. Smile around and find out. Or fuck the fuck off. I'm just trying to be more polite. I don't care which one you do, frankly. Now, everybody that I was so rudely interrupted with, I'm sorry. I think I'll go ahead and watch the tape first, one of the tapes that I got, and then I'll get into what I was going to get in. How about that? Sorry, we had a rude guest. Mine too, actually, a little red. Smile around and find out. It's okay. That's okay. Hold on now. It's okay, honey. I'll fix it later. That's okay. You're on the phone. I'll fix that later. It's fine. Don't stress yourself. I don't know. We'll try and find it. That's fine. That was just fun. That's fine. It's not important. Okay. Hold on a minute. Let's share this. Because this is what we're going to be talking about today. This is what we're going to be talking about. Sorry. Hold on. Another thing. Sorry. Smiley's revamped her page and people can't find their own content. I'm sorry. Hopefully that'll be the last gaslighting that I get. Sorry. But I am human. Hold on a minute. Okay, let's see which one it is. I want to do the shorter version.
In the 1940s in America,
Hold on, I think I stopped it. Hold on.
culminate into one story. 5 children go missing, the fire chief lies, bones are buried to cover up, and you get the greatest conspiracy of the 1940s, the mystery of the Sodder family. I'm Adam, thanks for watching Informal History, and I want to dive into one of the most captivating stories of missing people that maybe they're missing, maybe they're not. A whole different category of missing. Are they dead or alive? Does anybody know what actually happened to them? In the first decade of the 1900s, immigration of many Europeans into the United States by way of ship into Ellis Island was on the rise. In numbers, Italian immigrants arrived, and they contributed to a rapid growth of a still young nation across the Atlantic from their home country. Italy in the early 1900s was led by a fascist government ruling over the Italians that dare not speak ill of the regime. But once immigrated, opinions opened up and became more vocal, often leading to circumstances where the return to Italy would not be possible, and the Italian faithful would become bitter. Giorgio Sodder was one of the immigrants on one of those ships 13 years after his birth in 1895. He later changed his name to George Sodder to fit in, to assimilate more easily in his new home of the United States. And George found work early in life on the railroads. Working on the railroads was very common, an easy way in to earn money in the United States if you were an immigrant. Even if you were still learning the language, employment was possible. Years later, George found himself in Smithers, West Virginia as a driver, and shortly after, he started his own trucking company. George's trucking company became very successful. He's now a business owner, and he met and married Jenny Cipriani in 1922. That year in Fayetteville, West Virginia, a town that is known for a large Italian immigrant population, the two settled down and started a family. They resided in a 2-story timber-framed home, and as the family grew, so did George's distaste for Italy and their dictator, Benito Mussolini. This was an opinion that George grew louder and louder about, and not everybody was happy about it. On many occasions, it was accounted that George would become enraged in intense arguments with other Italian immigrants who didn't feel the same way that he did about the dictator in Italy. Keep in mind, during this time, Italians were seen as a different race of people altogether. So division between them, although not uncommon, was a much bigger deal. In 1945, door-to-door sales were a part of life. You'd often get a knock at the door and somebody would try to sell you something. And when a life insurance salesman turned up at the door of the Sodder family, George brushed him off quickly. And after a brief look around the house, the insurance salesman warned George that the wiring in the fuse box was terrible. It was faulty, and it would result in the house going up in smoke and the destruction of all his children. Words the insurance salesman seemed to pick very carefully. George knew the salesman was Italian. He knew he wasn't impressed that George wouldn't let him close the sale, and George knew that the salesman did not have the same views of the regime in Italy at the time. Shortly after this interaction, the Sodder children noticed a car, a mysterious car, parked up the street every day. The occupants watching the younger Sodder children going to and coming from school. On Christmas Eve, 1945, as every American family did, the Sodder family was beginning to celebrate Christmas. They were staying up a little bit later than they normally would, lights on in the house, Christmas lights twinkling for everyone that's passing by to marvel at. One by one, the family members retired to bed, and at 12:30 in the morning, the phone rang and was answered by Jenny Sodder. George's wife recalled hearing on the other end of the phone an unfamiliar female voice, cackling in an odd, sinister way. Jenny hung up, closed the curtains, and she went back to bed. Jolted awake 30 minutes later, Jenny recalls hearing something hard hit the top of the roof and start to wheel its way down, like a canister tumbling down the slope. Jenny then fell asleep, but a very short time later awoke again to the smell of smoke. She got up and investigated. She went upstairs to George's study and found engulfed in flames the fuse box and where the home phone wire was coming into the house. Urgently, she rushed to George. George awoke and awoke all of his oldest sons. He went to the corridor of the attic where the younger children were sleeping upstairs, yelled for them to come down. As the flames made it difficult for him to pass, he went downstairs with his children, made sure that his wife was safe, and tried to go back up, but the flames were too much. And as George and Jenny, with their children Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr., all stood outside the home, it became apparent that when Marion tried dialing for help, the phone line was cut. It was no longer working. So she ran to the neighbor's house to call for the fire department. George realized he needed to do something as the fire department was not there, and the house started to grow bigger and bigger, waves of flames. He went to his ladder, which was in the same spot year after year, day after day, but it was missing. So he attempted to climb the side of the house wearing nothing but bare feet and pajamas. He smashed through the window, cutting his arm badly, but he couldn't enter the house. He decided because he had trucks for his business, he would back them up next to the house and climb them, but neither of them would start, even though both of them were running.
I love them old trucks.
With unbelievable frustration, the 6 Sodders all stood watching their family home burn, and within 45 minutes, the structure fell. A pile of nothing but burning timber continued to smolder for hours and hours, and the fire department didn't arrive until later that morning. Chief F.J. Morris was low on manpower. This is the time of World War II, and this was a common occurrence. It turned out that Morris couldn't even drive his own fire truck, so he was left sitting on his hands, twiddling his thumbs, waiting for somebody to show up capable of driving the vehicle. The firefighters looked through the ash, the remains of the house sitting in the Sodder's basement for hours, trying to find anything that resembled human remains, trying to find something that the devastated family could bury and remember their loved ones. All Morris came up with was a few bones and some organs, and Morris decided not to tell the family, instead putting these little remains that he found into a tin and burying them a short distance away. Morris was embarrassed how long it took to arrive and couldn't bear to tell the family that they had found nothing but remnants of what they thought were human remains. It's likely Morris truly did believe what he found was all that was left of the 5 children. He was just embarrassed, couldn't bear bring this to the parents. So that's it, case closed. A family lost to a fire and the remains not found because they were cremated inside the blaze, right? Not so fast. Not long after the funeral on January 2nd, the family started to ask questions. If an electrical fire was the cause, how could the family's Christmas lights be on during the beginning of the blaze? Why was the ladder that for years was always in the same spot, leaning against the house, found in an embankment 75 feet away from the house? Why did the telephone repairman tell the family the phone line was in fact cut, not burned or melted? And that phone line that was 14 feet up, who would have done this? Who would have climbed to cut the wire? Was it the same man stealing block and tackle from the property short time before the fire? Well, a man was arrested and admitted to the theft and admitted to cutting the line, but claimed that he thought it was a power line and he had nothing to do with the fire. So who was this man? We'll never know. The identity was never revealed. Jenny became skeptical, thinking, could it be possible that the bodies couldn't have been burned by the circumstances? She believed this because many of the appliances in the home were left intact, fully recognizable. Jenny read of another fire killing 7 people, but leaving skeletal remains of all of them. And when Jenny found animal bones, she started to perform experiments trying to burn them into ash with fire. She failed every time. So she contacted a crematorium. She asked somebody there, is it possible that what the fire marshals told her could have happened? And she learned it wasn't. Human bones don't turn into ash unless they're subject to fire over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 2 hours. The fire burned much cooler than that on the night and for much less time. And for the years after, Mrs. Sodder tended to a memorial garden that her and George set up right on the spot of the tragic event. And as she tended this garden, she started to wonder, could my children still be out there, alive and well? Evidence became clear that the fire was in fact set deliberately, and a bus driver who passed the home on the Christmas Eve claimed to have seen people throwing balls of fire at the house. During the spring, after the snow melted in 1946, on the property was found a small green rubber ball, not unlike a grenade. Other witnesses claimed to have seen the Sodder children themselves. As the fire burned, she had seen the missing children looking out a passing car window. Another woman claimed to have seen the missing children at a truck stop the day after the fire, close to Charleston, eating breakfast that she herself served them. She remarked that there was a car looking suspicious with a Florida license plate in the parking lot that day, and never seen again. Morris was soon found out for putting those remains in the box and then buried, and when it was exhumed, it was found that all that was there were some animal bones and a beef liver. They weren't human remains at all. George hired private investigators. He wrote to the FBI, but nothing really came of these things. And in August 1949, the site was excavated and some vertebrae of a human were found. Finally, some closure. Upon investigation, for sure these had to be the remains of their children, but they were of a male human aged 17 to 20, and none of the children matched this description at all. It was presumed the bones came from the fill that George used to create the garden in the first place. Flyers were printed, and so was a billboard set up on the site where the house burned. Pictures of the children were put up, and a large cash reward, then doubled soon after, became available with anybody with information leading to a conclusion. Soon after, a hotel operator in Charleston claimed to have seen the children the week after the fire, apparently led by 2 men and 2 women of Italian extraction. She claimed to have tried to speak to one of the children, but one of the men turned hostile and started to scream in Italian. George followed leads all over the country, and in 1967, over 2 decades after the fire, George traveled to Houston to follow up with a woman who claimed Louis Sodder, one of the sons that was missing from the fire, revealed his true identity to her after 1 drink too many. George never got to speak to this man in question, but the police did, and the man said he was drunk and he didn't really mean what he said. It It was untrue. He wasn't Louis Sodder. Later that same year, addressed to Mrs. Sodder, in her mailbox, she found a picture. This man in his early 30s likely looked just like Louis. And written in that envelope was his name, Louis
To
Sodder.
me,
An
that looks just
investigation
like
was
him, but I don't
pursued, but
know.
nothing was found, and about a year later, George Sodder tragically passed away. The living Sodder children kept looking and investigating until 2021, when the youngest survivor, Sylvia Sodder Paxton, passed away. So the story lives on. What do you think happened to the Sodder children? Is it possible that there was some sort of backlash because of Mr. Sodder's negative opinion of the Italian regime? Were they just abducted? Were they murdered? Was it something that was happening within the family? Or did they all tragically pass in the fire and the remains were just never found? Let me know in the comments section below. And what video
Me just talking and it's on mute. Sorry about that. So, okay. How many of y'all have ever heard this story? And y'all go sub up to Information History. They have some pretty good stuff over there. But and I have another video we'll get into a little bit later about this story. Have any of y'all ever heard this? Because this was out of West Virginia. It was back in 1945 on Christmas Eve. Okay, so good. It's really interesting. I was kind of looking into it yesterday, and it's a whole lot to it, but it's really interesting. So there was this family, and again, they were the Sodders. And it is a true story. It was back in 1945 in Fayetteville, West Virginia. And they were a happy family, it seemed. They had a lot of kids, full of laughter. It was around the holidays, holiday spirit. You know how it can be around that time. A lot of love. Hey, Arnold Tom. Hello, hello. Good to have you here. Any old time. I said Arnold time. Told y'all my eyes are bad. And they had this fire. But 5 children vanished. There was no bodies, but there's a reason. I know y'all are going to say, you know, the cremation and all those things. But there was some kind of weird stuff that happened. And the reason that they said that, you know, no ashes, no smoke, just silence, suspicion. No, there was ashes, there was smoke and all that. I'm teasing. But George and Jeannie Sodder were very proud Italian immigrants. They raised 10 children. So they had 10 children. So like I said, I know what that's like to be around all those children, and especially during, you know, Christmas time and holidays. That's the best time. People's happy and laughing and all the things. But just after midnight on Christmas Eve, their whole world turned to ashes, literally. The house went up in smoke and a blaze just within minutes. Oh, thank you, Susie. You're so kind. Thank you. No, thank you for all you do, and thank you for being here and your support. Thank you, Susie. Love you, love you. The house that George and Jeannie was in with all of their kids, George and Jeannie and 4 of their kids made it out, but the other 5 did not. Maurice, Martha, Louise, and Jeannie Jr. and Betty, they were never seen again. Yeah, and it is, because back then, I was just thinking when they said on that video a while ago, even if he said, hey, I'm the Sodder boy and, you know, this is my name, And then he said, no, I was just drunk, or whatever. It's too bad back then they did not have what they have now, because they would know. So even if he was being held captive, or, he was in fear or whatever, it really might have been, it really might have been. Because, hey, that did look like him, but, we see a lot of things that others don't see, and it's not true, but it really could have been. We don't know. Thank you for that, Millie. Absolutely 100% thank you. Thank you. But the house went up in smoke, and those children were never seen again. And the police claimed the fire consumed, those children. But even as all the embers and the fire cooled down and went out, something just didn't set right. It didn't add up. And it was kind of strange. Some people say it was kind of strange because the phone line, as you saw in there, the phone line was just cut. And back then, people used to break in people's houses, even when I was growing up. And when they would do the nefarious stuff, you had the rotor phones and all that. But anyway, they would cut the phone lines to the house so people could not dial 911. We didn't have all of these cell phones and, all these things in our hand where I feel much safer, but, they would cut the phone lines and stuff to the house. They would just clip them. And so that's what they're saying happened here. They found that there was a ladder that was, they say, was outside close to the house that George had, the dad. And that ladder was tossed down by the road in this ravine. And one of George's trucks was disabled. They say the fire lasted about 45 minutes, and it was a real big, real bad fire, but there was no bone fragments left. But it gets weirder, and we'll get into that in just a second. But the fire experts later said, even if you're in a crematorium, bones don't just burn all the way completely. So where were the children at? Why didn't they find them? So people had theories, and I'm going to read you off several theories that they had when I did my research. Some people was saying that they died in the fire, and officials stuck to that. They just said simply they died in the fire despite that evidence was missing. Nobody could explain why evidence was missing. But some had the theory that they were kidnapped. And George, the dad, he had enemies because he made a few enemies on some things he said. And then they say that the day before that they seen people watching the house. And that was days before the fires. So could that have happened? Sure. Yeah. But we don't know. And again, this is something back in 1945. A woman claimed to have seen the children with strangers in a hotel, which we just saw that. And there was an anonymous photo that was mailed, decades later, with a boy who looked just like Lewis. Now, I don't know what y'all thought, but I think, possibly that could have been him. But that's just me. Hey, we don't know. Hey, Nurse Sandy, thank you so much for your super sticker. Thank you so much. You're the best. Thank you, honey. I appreciate you. Thank you. That was very generous of you. So yeah, that's Rana. That was some of the theories. But y'all, the Sodders, the parents, they never stop looking. Never. They even put up billboards with their children's faces on Route 16. And the billboards stayed up tall for 37 years. And those billboards demanded answers. But answers was never gave. Nobody ever came forward. And listen, if you're not understanding some, especially what the family thinks, there was curious details, and you have to admit that there was curious details about these missing Sodder children who was supposed to be in this fire who never made it out of the house, allegedly. While they were first declared dead in a Christmas Eve house, some believe that these 5 children were kidnapped just before their family home burned to the ground. Now, the Sodders and the, 4 other children, they got out. They got out. So could that even be possible? I mean, what do y'all think? Could that be possible? Hey, Annette and everybody coming in. Yeah, and Annette, see, she said it sounds like a personal vendetta, and I'm way down here, but I saw that go up there, so absolutely it does. Of course it could be possible. One thing everybody can agree on is the facts that one of the adult-age children was living away from home. And when the home burned to the ground, George and Jeannie Sodder escaped with their 4 other children, 4 out of 10 children. Okay, so that accounts for one. One was living away from the home. And then 5 was supposed to allegedly burn, but they never could find evidence. The other 5 allegedly never made it out of the home, but investigators declared them deceased in the blaze. But here's the strange details. The family, George and Jeannie, were in bed at a reasonable hour that night. The 2 older sons and the youngest daughter, a 2-year-old, and the oldest sister, 19-year-old Marion, stayed up late with the 5 middle children, but fell asleep on the couch. Jeannie woke up to a ringing phone around 12:30, and she wandered downstairs to answer it. A voice she did not recognize asked for a name she did not know. And Jeannie later told police she heard laughing and glasses clinking. Oh, that would be so weird. In the background. She assumed it was a wrong number, so she hung up, noting that Marion was asleep on the couch. The other 5 children were nowhere to be seen. So Jeannie assumed they were asleep in their attic bedroom. All the phone lines seemed to be down after that. Jeannie awoke to the smell of smoke and the sound of a roaring fire about an hour after the phone call. She and George escaped with their 2-year-old. Marion and the other 2 older sons escaped too, but the 5 middle children were nowhere to be seen as the family ran from the burning house. Marion tried to reach the fire department by phone from a neighbor's house, but there was no operator to respond. Oh, and back then, if you didn't know, we had operators too. I'm just saying. Somebody else who saw the blaze tried to call for help from a nearby tavern, which is also, y'all, what makes me think of the clinking glasses. Maybe somebody called from a bar or something down the road. the clinking glasses got me. It was, Susie, it was very strange. But anyway, they couldn't get through. So it took somebody driving down to the, downtown to personally find the fire chief before help could be got. Because again, the phones was down. By then, it was all too late. George tried to save the missing children, but he was stopped at every turn he tried. As George realized 5 of the children were still inside the burning home, he ran for the ladder he left laying beside the house so he could reach upstairs at a window. But the ladder was missing. So George was thinking fast. He worked to move a truck. He wanted to move the truck close to the house so that he could use it to reach the windows, but instead, the truck would not start, despite being in good working order before. Somebody had tampered also with the truck. So the phone lines had been cut. The ladder was thrown way out down in the ditch. And the truck wouldn't start. So the fire chief said he found remains in the rubble. Now, according to the fire chief, the children had died in this blaze, and their remains had been just incinerated by the heat. But that didn't jive too well with the parents. And 2 years after the blaze, the chief had apparently told somebody else he found a human heart. Now listen to this. He found a human heart, but decided to quietly bury it, and he forgot to tell George and Jeannie of what he discovered. Oh, but that ain't all. Just wait. When the Sodders heard about this, because they never gave up. Oh, and I'm just going to throw in, and I don't know if the chief or anything had anything to do with anything, but remember that phone call and the clinking and all that? Remember, they had to go down in town and get the chief. I'm just saying, I don't know where he's at. I just hope he wasn't at that bar. I'm just saying. But anyway. So, when they heard about this, they demanded, and I mean demanded, the chief show them where he buried that heart. And a funeral director, they got it. A funeral director said, excuse me, a funeral director identified the object was not even a heart. They dug it up, and it was not even a heart. It was a beef liver, y'all. It was a beef liver. Cattle, I guess. So then after that, rumors of sightings led to the Sodders to believe that the children didn't die in the fire after all. The woman said she saw children peering from a car that sped away from the burning home. Another person said she saw them at a hotel, and she served them breakfast in a restaurant that morning after the fire. The Sodders hired a private investigator. God, I can't even imagine what would it cost or whatever to hire a private investigator back then. But their parents never gave up. But anyway, they hired a private investigator even way back then to chase leads and tips, but the children were never found. Now, in the 1960s, Jeannie received an envelope that contained this photo of this man that looked like an adult version of her son, Lewis, one of the missing 5 children. But nothing ever came of that either. And the last living Sodder child died in 2021 without ever finding out what happened to her missing siblings. Today, This mystery is still unsolved despite investigations, searches. No bodies were ever found. Nothing. The conclusion that the children had died in the fire, however, the Sodder family believed the children were kidnapped and the fire was just some sort of diversion. So, could it have been a diversion? Yes. But why no remains were ever found of any of the children? So, it is pretty strange. I would question. And to much of the credit to the family, really, over the years, again, them putting up billboards, they took many tips. It caused cops to take many tips. They followed many leads. Still nothing. See, things got strange based on some things, like while the official report stated they perished in the fire, the lack of remains, the witness accounts, the family's belief they were kidnapped, the ongoing speculation. Hey, Joe Neal, good to see you. Good to see you. And despite the search, nothing. No bone fragments, nothing. They believed what they did find was planted just to represent the children. I mean, but there was 4 of them. So even if they found one, where were the other 3? I'm talking bones that belong to one. So it is strange. Even if they would have found an organ, which it was not an organ, come to find out, where would anything else like that be? I mean, common sense would tell you something was not right. So what a better way to try to cover taking 5 kids than a fire? I don't know. To me, it would be pretty risky, but that's me. I'm not a criminal, so I don't know. Again, why would the police chief bury something he thought was a heart only years later to tell somebody he found a heart? The parents had it dug up, and it was not even that. It was just a beef liver. And was he at that time trying to help cover up? I don't know. It was very strange. So the house collapsed. The fire destroyed the house. The basement collapsed, leading to, allegedly, the cremation. George Sodder, he plowed over the site. He planted flowers. He potentially destroyed any evidence, but it got sticky after witnesses' accounts and sightings and all that stuff anyway. One of the theories was the mafia became, that they believe the mafia was involved due to George Sodder's outspoken criticism. But this theory is just, it was just a theory. Right, Joe, it doesn't even look like a human heart. It does not. It does not. So why would he even bury it? I think he intended to tell them that, and maybe he did forget about it. But I don't know. That's really weird. So the family believes the children were kidnapped, all of them, and it was just a fire to set up to cover it up. I think that's what they always thought and believed in their heart. Was they right? Was they wrong? I don't know. The family hired this private investigator to follow our leads, but nothing ever panned out. There wasn't a recovery from the depression until after. Yeah, exactly, Annette. Exactly. And, you know, if um, he done made somebody mad or something, um, would that be something they do? I don't know. Did that type of organization harm kids or take kids? Hey, baby kisses, thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you. The kids that were unaccounted for were Maurice, who was 14, was Martha, who was 12, Lewis, who was 10, Jeannie, who was 8, and Betty, who was 5. And again, they accused the mafia. The Sodders never rebuilt the house, instead converting it into a memorial garden to the lost children in the 1950s, as they came to doubt the children had perished. The family put up a billboard along the State Road 16, also with pictures of all 5 of them, offering a reward for information that would bring closure to the case. It remained standing until shortly after Jeannie Sodder's death. She died in 1989. In support of their belief that the children survived, the Sodders had pointed to a number of unusual circumstances before and during the fire. George always disputed the Fayetteville Fire Department's findings that the blaze was electrical, which is what the fire department said, and noting he had recently had the house rewired and inspected. George and his wife suspected arson, leading to theories the children had been taken again by the mafia, perhaps in retaliation for George being so outspoken. You know, state and federal efforts to investigate the case further in the early 1950s yielded no information. The family did, however, later receive what, may or may not have been pictures of, the adult boys, especially Lewis, and their last surviving daughter, Sylvia, along with their grandchildren, continued to publicize this case into the 21st century in the media. And, the family's Christmas lights had remained on throughout the fire's early stages when the power should have gone out. And that right there made absolutely no sense. Yeah, absolutely, Joe. They are. Absolutely. So that's what I was saying. Is it possible? And I don't know, back then, would they do that and take the kids? Would they take their kids? I think possibly. I don't know. I don't know. And it was, Ronna says yes. I tell you, the mafia is not something you want to mess with, period. I don't care who they are. I'm just saying. A man who neighbors had seen stealing a block and some tackle and all that around the property at the time of the fire, he was identified and arrested. He admitted to theft, and he claimed he had been the one who cut the phone lines at one time, thinking it was a power line, but he denied having anything to do with any of this mess. He said he didn't do nothing. But he did say he cut the phone lines. True? I don't know. And if it was mafia stuff, did they have him take the fall? I don't know. But this is a mystery. Why would anybody want to cut the utility lines to the Sodder house when stealing a block and tackle? That's never been explained. Also, that does not account for the ladder being thrown down by the street, and it does not account for Mr. Sodder's truck being messed with. Hey, Daily Tab, I hope you're doing good, sweetheart. Hello, hello. So that just makes no sense. I think maybe this guy was possibly a fall guy. That's just my opinion. I don't know. But Jeannie also had trouble accepting this guy Morris's belief, and all traces of the children's body completely burned up in this fire. And I don't blame her, not as a mother or anything else. Along with the fragments and, the tin roof and all this stuff. I don't blame her. She read around the same time that a killed family member of 7, this is a different case, had skeletal remains of all the victims, and they were reported to have been found. So that made Jeannie burn small piles of animal bones to see if they would be completely consumed, and none ever was. She was convinced that somebody took her children. An employee of a local cremation place she contacted told her that human bones remains even after bodies are burned at 2,000 Fahrenheit. For 2 hours. Oh, God. I don't know. It seems like it would have been something. The Sodder's truck failure, to start, and it was in perfect condition. That was also considered. That made George believe it had been tampered with. Maybe by the same person that took the block and tackle and said he cut the phone line. But I don't think George was buying it. Some accounts have suggested that, the person that called from the wrong number might also have been connected to the fire. Investigators located the woman who made the call, and she confirmed it had been a wrong number. As spring approached, the Sodders, they said they planted flowers, and the soil they bulldozed over the house, Jeannie tended to it carefully for the rest of her life. But evidence soon emerged indicating that the fire had not started with the electrical fault and was indeed set deliberately. The driver of the bus that passed through Fayetteville late Christmas Eve said he had seen some people throwing balls of fire at the house. A few months later, when the snow melted, Sylvia found a small, hard, dark green rubber ball in the bush nearby. George recalled his wife's account, a loud thump on the roof before the fire, and said it looked like a pineapple bomb, some kind of hand grenade or some other type device in combat. The family later claimed that, contrary to the fire marshal's conclusion, the fire had started on the roof. Although by then there was no way to prove it. So I think they were trying to cover things up, in my opinion. But there was no way to prove it after all that time. And again, back then they didn't have the things that they have now. A woman that had been watching the fire from the road said she's seen some of the children looking out. Her words were peering out of a passing car while the house was burning. Can you imagine that if they were? The children just looking in fright, seeing their home burn down and didn't know where they were going or what was going on. It's possible. Another woman at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston said she had served them breakfast the next morning and noted presence of the car with a Florida license plates in the rest stop parking lot. So the Sodders hired this private investigator named C.C. Tinsley from the nearby town, Gooley Bridge, to look into this case. Tinsley told the family that the insurance salesman who had threatened George over his stuff, whatever he was saying to them, Semetics and all this stuff he was saying to them, had been on the coroner's jury that ruled the fire an accident. Are you kidding me? He also learned of rumors around Fayetteville that despite his report to the Sodders that no remains had been found in the ashes, Morris had found a heart which he later packed into a metal box and secretly buried. And that's when they, dug it up and found something totally different. But Morris had apparently confessed to his local minister, who confirmed to George, and Tinsley went to Morris and confronted him with this news. Morris agreed to show the two where he had buried the metal box, and he did, and they dug it up and found, that it was beef liver, a fresh beef liver. And it had never even been exposed to the fire. Never. Then more rumors started circulating around Fayetteville that Morris had afterwards. I mean, it just went on and on and on. George tried to interest the FBI in investigating what he considered a kidnapping. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover at the time personally responded to his letters. Although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within the investigative jurisdiction of this bureau. What the F? If the local authorities requested the bureau's assistance, he added, he would of course direct agents to assist, but the Fayetteville police and fire departments declined to do so. See, y'all, I don't care what nobody says or does. I'm telling y'all, even way back to 1945, here you go, it is right here. FBI ain't getting in unless who's in charge invites them in. I don't care how much you scream, yell, lie, cheat, hurt people. Lie. I just had to throw that in. But I'm telling you, they ain't coming in until they're invited. Unless somebody gets them out of the way and puts somebody else in charge, and they still got to get invited. Just saying. We going all the way back here to 1945. That's right. Thank you, not crazy. Don't take my word for it. We're in a 1945 story, honey. But hey, Smiley don't know nothing, okay? So, in 1949, in August, George was able to persuade Oscar Hunter, a Washington, D.C. pathologist, to supervise a new search through and sift through the dirt at the house site. After a very thorough search, artifacts including a dictionary that had belonged to the children and some coins were found. Several small bone fragments were unearthed, determined to have been human vertebrae. The bone fragments were sent to Marshall T. Newman, a specialist at Smithsonian Institution, and they were confirmed to be lumbar vertebrae, all from the same person, since the transfer recesses are fused. The age of the individual at death should have been 16 or 17 years old. Newman's report said the top limit of age should be about 22, which normally fuse at 23 and are still unfused. Thus, given the age range, it was not very likely that these bones were from any of the 5 missing children. Since the oldest, Maurice, had been 14 at the time, although the report allowed the vertebrae of the boy his age sometimes were advanced enough to appear to be at the lower end of the range. Newman added that the bone showed no sign of exposure to flame. So you can't be in a fire without flame, right? Sure can't. Further, he agreed it was very strange that those bones were the only ones found, since a wood fire of such short duration should have left full skeletons of the children behind. The report concluded that the vertebrae had instead most likely come from the dirt that George had used to bulldoze the site later on. Tinsley supposedly confirmed that the bone fragments had come from a cemetery in nearby Mount Hope, but could not explain what they had been taken from there or how they come to be at the fire site. The Smithsonian returned the bone fragments to George in September 1949, according to records. The current location is unknown. The investigation and its findings attracted national attention, and the West Virginia legislature held 2 hearings on the case in 1950. Afterwards, however, Governor Oakley L. Patterson and State Politics Superintendent W.E. Burgett told the Sodders the case was hopeless. Wow. And he closed it at the state level. The FBI decided it had jurisdiction as a possible interstate kidnapping, but dropped the case after 2 years of following fruitless leads. With the end of the official efforts to resolve the case, the Sodder family did not give up hope. They never gave up hope. They had flyers printed up with pictures of the children. They offered a $5,000 reward. Soon that doubled. They just wanted information that would have settled the case, just even for one of them. The case in 1952, they put up a billboard. Another one along Route 60 They put one in Anstead with the same information. It would in time become a landmark for traffic through Fayetteville on U.S. Route 19, today State Route 16. The family's efforts soon brought another reported sighting in the children after the fire. Ida Crutchfield, a woman who ran a Charleston, West Virginia hotel, claimed to have seen the children approximately a week afterwards. I do not remember the exact date, she said in a statement. The children had come in around midnight with 2 men and 2 women, all of whom appeared to be Italian. When she attempted to speak with the children, one of the men looked at me in a very hostile manner. He turned around and he began talking really fast in Italian. Immediately, the whole party stopped talking to me. She recalled that they left the hotel early the next morning. Investigators today do not, however, consider her story credible, as she had only seen the first photos of the children 2 years after the fire. 5 years before she even came forward. George followed up leads in person himself. He traveled to the areas from where tips had come from. A woman from St. Louis, Missouri claimed Martha was being held at a convent there. A bar partner in Texas claimed they overheard 2 other people making incriminating statements about the fire that happened on Christmas Eve in West Virginia many years before. None of that proved significant. When George heard later that relatives of his wife Jeannie's in Florida had children that looked very similar to his, the relative had to prove the children were theirs before George was even satisfied. Dang, this is starting to sound familiar. Anyway, in 1967, George went to Houston area to investigate another tip. A woman in her hand, and this woman there had written to the family saying that Lewis had revealed his true identity to her one night after having too much to drink. Now, this is the young boy Lewis. Okay, when they sent the pictures of him older, he did look like. But they revealed his true identity, or they said it. The woman said he said it was him. Lewis told her that was his true identity. He was a Sodder child. And she believed that he and Maurice was both living in Texas somewhere. However, George and his son-in-law, Grover Paxton, were unable to speak with her. Police there were able to help them find the 2 men she had indicated, but they denied being the missing sons. Paxton said years later that doubts about the denial lingered in George's mind for the rest of his life. Oh my God, I bet it did. Another letter that they received that year brought the Sodders what they believed was the most credible evidence of all. And that was that Lewis was still alive. And one day, Jeannie found in the mail a letter addressed to her, and it was postmarked in Central City, Kentucky. No return address. Inside was a picture of a young man around 30 years old with features strongly resembling Lewis, who would have been about in his 30s if he had survived in that day. And it was written, Lewis Sodder, I love Frankie, little brothers. And it had A90132 or 35. I don't know what that means. But the family hired a private detective to go to Central City and look into that. But he never reported back to the Sodders, and they were unable to locate him after that. The picture nonetheless gave them hope, and they added to it, and to the billboard, and leaving Central City out of it and any other published information out of it in fear Lewis might come to harm or be in danger, and they did not want to put him in any danger. So they made an enlargement of it and they put it over their fireplace. George admitted to the Charleston Gazette late the next year that the lack of information had been hitting like a rock. And we can't go any further. He nevertheless vowed to continue. Time is running out for us, he admitted in another interview around that time. But we only want to know, did they die in the fire? We want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them. George Sodder died in 1969. Jeannie and her surviving children, except John, who never talked about the night of the fire except to say that the family should accept what happened and move on with their lives, continue to seek answers to their questions about the missing children's fate. After George's death, Jeannie stayed in the family home, putting up fences around it and adding additional rooms for the rest of her life. She wore black in mourning and tended to the garden. I can't imagine. At the site of her former house. After her death in 1989, the family finally took the worn billboard down, and the surviving Sodder children joined in their own children and continue to publicize the case and investigate leads. They, along with older Fayetteville residents, have theorized that it was the mafia and they were trying to extort money from George, and the children may have been taken by someone who knew about the planned arson, and they said they would be safe if they left the house. They were possibly taken to Italy. If the children had survived all those years, and were aware their parents and siblings had survived too, the family believes they may have avoided contact in order to keep all of them safe. Yeah, I agree, Annette. I agree. And there is definitely Stockholm Syndrome. And that is perhaps true. It could be. Sylvia Sodder Paxton, the youngest of the surviving Sodder siblings, died in 2021 as well. She was in the house on the night of the fire, which she was that was one of her earliest memories. She said, I was the last kid to leave home, she recalled to the Gazette Mail in 2013. She and her father often stayed up late talking about what might have happened. She said, I experienced their grief for a long time. She believed that her siblings survived that night and assisted with efforts to find them. She publicized the case. Her daughter said in 2006, she promised, she said, her grandparents, she wouldn't let the story die, that she would do everything she could. And in the 21st century, her family's efforts have come to include outline forums like websleuth.com, in addition to media coverage, and the case, that they believe that the children did, in fact, some of the people in the case believe that the children did, in fact, die in 1945. George Bragg, he's a local author who wrote about this case in 2012 in a book called West Virginia's Unsolved Murders. He believes John was telling the truth in his original account when he said he tried to physically awaken the siblings before fleeing the house. He also allows that the conclusion still might not be correct. Logic tells you that probably they did burn up in the fire, but you can't always go by logic. Stacy Horn, she did a segment on the case for National Public Railroad. Let's see, who was she with? National Public Radio around its 60, I think the 60th anniversary in 2005, I believe. I didn't write that down. 2005. And she believes that the children's death in the fire was the most plausible solution herself. So, it's a lot of things and a lot of stuff people believe and a lot of theories out there. But firefighters might have known not what to look for. I want to watch this other video that I have here. Now, this is interesting. Hold on. Oh, shit. Hold on. Share screen. I think this one is a real good, interesting. Having Sodder children. Oh, wait a minute. Why is that?
In the early hours of Christmas Eve 1945, a house fire broke out in Fayetteville, West Virginia, devastating a family called the Sodders. Out of George and Jenny Sodder's 9 children, 5 were never seen again. You might expect that these missing kids had perished inside. However, reality isn't so simple. Their remains were never found.
That's not the right
their bodies
credit.
Unaccounted for.
Please make sure you drop the right credit.
It's like they up and vanished, leaving a multi-decade-long mystery lying in their wake. Welcome back to another video adaptation of Late Nights with Nexpo, my new podcast that launched just last month with new mysteries you can listen to every single week. From what it looks like, you guys seem to have enjoyed the launch video, and so I've decided to pick one a month from the pack of currently uploaded episodes, adapt it to video, and bring it to you guys here. After this video, if there's an episode that you find interesting, one that you'd like to see adapted here in between main uploads, let me know in the comments. Alright, without further ado, into the abyss we go. Welcome back, my friends, to Late Nights with Nexpo. Night. You're driving along a lonely stretch of West Virginia highway. The only light comes from the headlights of your car, which scenery is a blur. Until suddenly, up ahead, you see it. A strange billboard looming low to the ground at the side of the road. From it, the face of unsmiling children staring back at you. Their photos are haunting enough. But then you read the words plastered above. What was their fate? Kidnapped or murdered? Or are they still alive? Christmas Eve, 1945. Just outside Fayetteville, West Virginia. Freezing temperatures make the trees creak and the river run still. But inside the Sodder family's house, it's warm. George and Jenny Sodder are there with 9 of their 10 children. The only member of the family that's not present is Joe, the Sodder's second to oldest son, who's away serving in the army. The youngest children, who have just received some new toys from the local dime store, play happily in the living room. As it gets late, the parents retire to their bedroom on the first floor, taking their 3-year-old daughter Sylvia with them. Everyone else has beds on the second floor. The older kids, John, Marion, and George Jr., share one room. The younger kids, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, sleep in another upstairs room. At this point, the Sodder children begin to trickle off to bed. But not all. Some of the younger ones are too excited about Christmas to go to sleep just yet. And Marion, the eldest daughter, stays up on the couch to watch them play a little while longer. Though other children still have chores to do. Maurice and Louis must go outside to feed the animals before they turn in. It's not an enviable chore. Maurice and Louis layer on hats and coats and journey out into the freezing darkness to feed them. It's a stark contrast from the warmth, joy, and laughter of the living room to the quiet, eerie stillness of the outdoors. 2 hours later, a silence has fallen over their home. And then, at 12:30 a.m., the phone rings. Jenny, the mother, awakens with a startle. She looks around her bedroom, orienting herself. George and little Sylvia are sleeping soundly next to her. She gets out of her warm bed, clutching her nightgown against the cold. Bewildered as to who could be calling at this hour, she exits her room and crosses to the table where the phone is. The lights, she notices, are still on. They should be turned off now that all the children are in bed, all save for Marion, who's fallen asleep on the living room couch. Jenny reaches the phone, grabs the receiver off the hook, and offers a blunt hello. But the voice on the other end doesn't introduce themselves. Instead, what Jenny hears is laughter. And it's not pleasant laughter either. It feels cruel, almost as though this caller is mocking her. And then, suddenly, it stops. The voice on the line finally speaks and asks for a name, someone that doesn't live there. And so, Jenny informs them that they have the wrong number and hangs up. Unsettled, Jenny surveys the room around her. A number of unusual things pop out to her now. It's not just that the lights are all on. The curtains are wide open, too. And when Jenny walks to the front door, she finds it unlocked. She sighs. Her children know perfectly well how to lock up for the night. She considers waking Marion to chastise her, but thinks better of it. It's Christmas, after all. The kids were probably just excited and forgetful. Jenny locks the door herself and closes the curtains. Then she hurries back to the warmth of her bed and slowly drifts off to sleep. A strange noise comes from above. Jenny's eyes blink open. She sits up groggily, trying to get her bearings. It's still dark out. Now she hears a new noise overhead. A rolling sound, like something landed on the roof with a thud and rolled off. And then, silence. Jenny tells herself that it was just an animal.
I don't
She
think
tries
they
to
come
fall back
along till the
asleep,
80s. I
but
don't
then
know.
an acrid scent hits her nostrils. Her eyes fly open. She's wide awake now. It's because she knows that smell. It's smoke. In an instant, Jenny's up and out of bed, hoisting little Sylvia into her arms and screaming for George to wake up. She sees smoke pouring into the bedroom from beneath the door. George, Jenny, and Sylvia burst out of their bedroom, and they're met with an apocalyptic scene. Their house is becoming engulfed in flames. They race to the telephone to call the fire department, only to discover, to their horror, that the phone line, which worked perfectly just a little while ago, is dead. Amidst the chaos, what springs to the front of Ginny's mind is a number: 9. 9 of her children are in the house right now. Only 2 of Ginny's children are accounted for at the moment. Her youngest, Sylvia, is wailing in her arms, and nearby, her eldest daughter, Marion, has awakened on the first floor couch. Ginny locks her gaze on the staircase leading to the upstairs bedrooms. It's impassable. The heat coming from the upper floor is too intense. The smoke is too thick. And so, that makes it 7. 7 of Ginny's kids are trapped upstairs. Ginny screams up the staircase, her eyes stinging from the smoke. She keeps them open, though, praying to see her children. Finally, a figure emerges from the smoke and hurtles down the stairs. Another follows close behind. It's 2 of the oldest boys, John and George Jr., and their hair is singed from the flames.
Just happened. Hold on a minute. Now I'm talking all on mute. I said, anyway, what I was trying to say is, can you imagine that the fire starting upstairs and you could be, or your children be upstairs and all that? But remember what they said about the balls, and somebody said that they thought that somebody started the fire. And the mom said she thought that it started staying up or started from upstairs. That's what it looks like. But I cannot imagine. Oh my word. That's what it looks like. I'm just saying. I don't know.
The boys are hysterical. They tell their parents that they tried to get into their younger sibling's bedroom, but they couldn't. Now the noise, the heat, everything else disappears from Ginny's world. She casts a final glance upstairs as her husband pulls her away toward the exit. The number in Ginny's head is now 5. 5 of her kids are up those stairs, and none of them are coming down. A moment later, Ginny, George, and the 4 kids who are accounted for are standing outside. It's freezing cold, and they're all still in their nightgowns. But George doesn't hesitate. He races off to fetch the ladder they keep against the side of the house. The others follow, their bare feet slapping against the icy ground. But around the corner of the home, another shock awaits them. Their ladder is gone. Following this, they go to their garage to get their truck so they can drive it up to the window and climb up. Now, the Sodders have 2 trucks, but when George tries the ignition on both of them, neither engine will start. George can't believe it. Both trucks worked perfectly fine just yesterday. He bolts out of the garage, desperately searching for something, anything that might help. There's an old rain barrel near the home, and so George tries to throw some water into the flames, but it's no use. The water inside the barrel is frozen solid. Because of this, George is reduced to shouting the children's names over and over at the house. But in return, all he hears is the roar of the inferno. While the house continues to burn, the oldest daughter, Marion, dashes away down the dark, freezing road. The Sodders' phone doesn't work, but their neighbors just might. She's still barefoot, and there isn't another house for quite a while. At last, she arrives, and tears of relief flow down her cheeks as the neighbor lets her in and points her to their phone. Shaking from head to toe, Marion manages to place the call, but the operator doesn't respond. Marion is beside herself. This can't be happening. The neighbor grabs his coat and rushes for the door, informing her that he'll drive into town and alert the fire chief in person. Fayetteville's fire chief, F.J. Morris, is fast asleep when the Sodders' neighbor arrives. Once Morris gets filled in, he begins the process of alerting Fayetteville's other volunteer firefighters. Their department operates by using a phone tree, which means one calls the other, calls the other, calls the other. It's time-consuming, and it takes a while for all the volunteers to be notified, assemble at the firehouse, and then drive out to the Sodders' home. But even so, the emergency response to the fire feels less than urgent. The Sodders' home is only 2.5 miles from the firehouse, and yet the firefighters don't arrive on the scene until 7 hours later. By this
What?
point, the sun
I
is up
know it's
and
7
the house
hours
is
later.
gone.
Oh my God.
For hours, George and his family have helplessly watched the entire structure be reduced to ashes before their eyes, with their 5 children apparently trapped inside. There is no urgency from George or his family once the fire trucks finally pull up to the scene. There's no shouting or waving of arms. The time for that has long passed. For the past 7 hours, George has experienced more emotions than in the rest of his life combined. Complete terror, complete helplessness, rage at the firefighters' lackluster response, and finally, the horrific bitterness of losing 5 children before his very eyes. Now, on Christmas morning 1945, he's simply numb. The firefighters douse the smoldering wreckage with water. They search for the bodies of the missing children, but they can't find even a single bone. Fire Chief Morris says the fire must have incinerated them completely, and so he declares the children dead at the scene. The next
7 hours later? No, I'm convinced now. I never heard that before. I'm convinced now there was a cover-up. I'm convinced now that that call did come from the bar with them clinking glasses. And I am convinced that that's why they got the girl to say she called. I am convinced of a lot of things now, honey. Oh my God, 7 hours later? What the heck? They wanted it, in my opinion, they knew they were not going to find. I think the mafia got to all of them. They wanted it to be like a cover up. Yes, Susie, they wanted it to be like, oh, the bodies was cremated and what? The phone lines cut. Oh, that is scary. It's very suspicious at the very least. I have never heard the 7-hour thing until now. One of them run down there in town faster than a chicken with its head cut off to get help, and it took them 7 hours to get up there. What was they doing? Finishing off them clinking glasses in the bar? I'm just asking. 7 hours. What? Oh my God.
The next day, December 26th, a coroner's jury declares the fire accidental, and by December 30th, death certificates are issued for the 5 kids. A state police inspector eventually arrives. Given that the house
Yes,
burned for
it's
so
real.
long and so completely,
This is a
it's
true
not
story,
easy to
too.
determine a cause.
It
But
happened
in
in
the end, he attributes the fire to
1940,
faulty wiring.
uh,
To George, it all happened so
45.
fast. Too fast. The fire department took so long to come put the fire out, but then afterwards, officials practically sprinted to declare the fire an accident and the children dead. It makes George uneasy. But what can he do? The Sodders try to move on. In the new year, George brings in dirt from off-site and covers the ruins. They plant a garden in remembrance of the children they lost. If the story ended here, it would be a mercy. The Sodders could mourn in peace. However, our story is just beginning. Shocking details are about to emerge. Details that suggest that this fire was no accident, and that the supposedly deceased Sodder children may actually be alive. It's spring. On a day like today, the sound of children's laughter should be echoing across the Sodders' property. Yet instead, it's silent. The surviving Sodders have been without a home for months, and the time has come to rebuild. But their new house won't be where the previous one stood, as the site of the fire is to remain a memorial garden forever. George is overseeing the construction of the family's new home nearby when he sees one of the workers approaching him. It's a telephone repairman, and he's discovered something odd. He leads George over to a nearby telephone pole and explains that when he ascended the pole on his ladder, he expected to find the remnants of the telephone wire that used to lead to the Sodders' old house. Instead, though, he found no burned wire dangling there at all. Rather, it was completely severed, cut cleanly, intentionally. Immediately, George realizes what that means. The phone lines didn't melt in the fire. Someone cut them, and they would have needed a ladder to do it. A ladder. George thinks back to the night of the fire, and suddenly he takes off across the yard, searching wildly under bushes and rubble. It's not until reaching the back of the property where the yard falls off into a ditch that he finds what he's looking for. It's his ladder, the one that he kept propped up on the side of the house. The one that he could not find to save his children on the night of the fire. And it's here where he realizes it wasn't misplaced. Someone moved it. George feels dizzy, nauseous even. The blood is pounding in his temples. A whole new series of details are flooding his mind. The wrong number in the middle of the night. The thump on the roof. His trucks that wouldn't start when he needed them most. And this is when it hits him. This fire may not have been an accident at all. George forces himself to breathe and tries to clear his head. He reminds himself that the investigators already determined the cause. It was faulty wiring. And yet, George can't bring himself to believe it. He was in the house when it happened. The investigators weren't. Now, a final memory comes back to George. When he emerged from his dark bedroom into the living room, it was bright. And not just because of the flames either. He's certain that the lights were still on. And if the lights in the house were on, it means the fire couldn't have been started by an electrical short. Otherwise, the house's power would have failed, and it would have been completely out. He rushes to tell Jenny, and she remembers it all the same way he does. In her recollection, the lights were definitely on when they came out of the bedroom. In her mind, she returns to the moment after she hung up the phone. She closed the curtains, she locked the door, but no, she didn't turn the lights off before going back to bed. She left them on for her daughter. So if the house had electricity at the time, the lights should have been on, and they were. All at once, a realization rushes over them. Her eyes meet his, and the word on their lips, arson. At this point, there's no stopping it. George and Ginny's minds are running wild. considering every possibility. They've lost so much, and the idea that someone could have wished this upon them, that someone could have actually done this to their family, is staggering. Everything Ginny thought she knew has been thrown into question. She asks herself, if it's possible that someone in their community had started this fire on purpose, then what else is possible? What else could the investigators and officials have been wrong about? Can she believe anything she's been told about the fire, about the fate of her 5 little children? Doubt begins to gnaw at her. She can't stop thinking about that night, picking apart every tiny detail in her mind. Ginny can't bring herself to accept that her 5 young children actually perished in those flames. Perhaps it's the wishful thinking of a mother who has suffered an unthinkable loss, but perhaps not. Because what really keeps Ginny awake at night are the facts of this case, or rather, the lack thereof. Why were there no screams or cries for help during the fire? Why are there no skeletal remains in the wreckage? They say burning flesh can be smelled from miles away, and if that's true, why in the world didn't they smell it? She begins to fixate on these details and on the bones.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
She
fall.
hears about something that happened in a neighboring community, another fire. In it, 7 people died, but in that case, 7 skeletons were recovered. And this gnaws at her. She can't understand why there were no skeletons in the ashes of her home. She decides to conduct an experiment. She has plenty of animal bones in the trash from cooking chicken and pork chops for the family. And so she decides to take these bones and put them in her oven, making it as hot as she can. Interestingly, no matter how hot she gets the oven, she can't get the bones to turn to ash. Now, it's not the most scientific experiment. Her oven is not as hot as the house fire would have been, but to her, it's enough. Ginny, in her state, won't be convinced otherwise. In her heart, she knows that her children's bones could not have possibly been turned to ash. And with this, an employee at a local crematorium concurs, informing Ginny that human bones remain after being subjected to temperatures comparable to that of a house fire. It's not definitive proof, but it's more than enough for a mourning mother to cling to. No bones were recovered, which means that there's a chance, even if a small one, that the Sodder children weren't in the fire at all. And if they weren't in the fire, it's possible that they're still alive. But this is hardly a comforting thought, because if they are still alive, where are they? Ginny knows that there's no chance that they wandered off before the fire or fled during it and somehow got lost. They were young, but not so young that they couldn't find help. Maurice, the oldest, was 14. And if they had escaped the fire but succumbed to the elements, their bodies surely would have been found by now. So the Sodder children didn't wander off, and it seems like they didn't die in the fire either. This leaves one other possibility, but it's unthinkable. It's insane. Ginny and George both know it, and yet they can't bring themselves to believe any other explanation than this. That fire was nothing but a distraction, a cover for the real crime that took place that night. Kidnapping. Now, instead of grieving, the Sodders begin to think back on every strange moment from the months prior, every confrontation or mysterious occurrence, the kinds of events a person writes off as nothing to worry about, resurfacing and filled with sinister possibility. Which is to say that to the Sodders, every acquaintance, every neighbor, is now a suspect. George thinks back, trying to recall any recent interactions that felt a bit strange at the time, and one in particular comes to mind right away. Months prior, a strange man showed up at the Sodders' home, inquiring if George, who owned a hauling company, was hiring. George said that he wasn't, and yet the traveler still hung around the house a bit, like he wasn't taking no for an answer. It was an uncomfortable situation. George followed him around the yard, trying to ride the line between being polite and getting the traveler to move on. The young man started to point out things about the yard, as if trying to impress him with his handyman knowledge. And, circling to the home's rear, George recalls that the man pointed to the fuse boxes on their wall and said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." In that moment, George concluded that this man had no idea what he was talking about. After all, he had just had the boxes looked at and approved by the power company. Eventually, the man left, and George put the incident out of his mind. But now, George can't help but wonder, had the traveler really moved on down the road? Or did he hang around, bitter about being turned down for work? In another instance, Ginny recalls something else. Another curious event that happened shortly before the fire. One day, she was working in the kitchen when, through the window, she saw the kids coming home from school. But in that moment, her eyes were drawn to something else. Behind her kids, a car she didn't recognize was parked on the street. Inside it was a man, and he appeared to be watching them. All of them, it seemed. The children, Ginny, the house itself, and the way he was looking at them. It felt unusual, aggressive even. It made Ginny uneasy, but once her kids were inside, the car drove away and she sighed in relief. But now, she's left to wonder, was this man doing some sort of reconnaissance? But unfortunately, that's only the beginning of the suspect list. As an Italian immigrant, George had strong beliefs about the leader of the country he left behind. He was an outspoken critic of Mussolini, which ruffled the feathers among Fayetteville's Italian-American community. George had one business associate in particular, who we'll call Nick. He and Nick fell out over their politics, and in their final fight, Nick allegedly shouted, "Your goddamn house is going up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed. You're going to pay for the dirty remarks you've been making about Mussolini." Finally, Ginny remembers the strange call she received on the phone right before the fire. It seemed like a wrong number, but now she thinks maybe it was the conspirators calling to make sure they were home. George and Ginny share their suspicions with the police. Though they're not convinced, they agree to investigate and put up notices around town and in the newspaper, asking for leads relating to the missing children or the fire. And soon after, a series of disturbing reports start rolling in. Around April 1946, a spectator from the morning after the fire reveals that they saw a young man remove something from the ashes. It's unclear if this was before or after the firefighters
Hey, Bud,
arrived.
I don't know if you
Though
heard me,
once
but
they
I
got
said
there,
thank
there was a
you
crowd of people for the thief
for
to
my
blend
super
into.
chat yesterday.
The police tracked
I
down
didn't
the
know
thief
until after
and
I got
identified
off.
the
I
young
love
man
you.
as Lonnie Johnson, a local thief. And with this, an item belonging to the Sodders is discovered in his possession. It's a block and tackle, a sort of rope and pulley George often used to repair vehicles for work. Lonnie swears up and down that he had nothing to do with the fire. And yet, when pushed, he admits that not only did he steal this tool, but he was at the house the night before the fire. In a stunning revelation, Lonnie says that he took the ladder and that he used it to cut the phone line. Ostensibly, this was so that if he was caught stealing, the Sodders couldn't call the police before he escaped. But he says he never did steal anything other than that block and tackle, which he only took after the house had already burnt down. It's a very odd thing to admit to while denying any further involvement. Like the man in the car, or George's business associate Nick, Lonnie, by all accounts, seems like an agent in a larger conspiracy. But in order to prove something of that magnitude, the Sodders are going to need a staggering amount of new evidence. And surprisingly, that's exactly what's about to arrive. In 1946, an eyewitness comes forward to the police. The man is a bus driver. He claims that while driving past the Sodders' home during the night of the fire, he witnessed a person throwing, quote, balls of fire at the house. It's unclear why he didn't report this at the time. Perhaps he thought it was some sort of Christmas celebration or a controlled demolition. Or maybe he thought it was an act of violence and he just didn't want to get involved. But nevertheless, it's enough to compel the family to return to the scene of the fire to see if there's anything they might have missed. While the family's there, toddler Sylvia gets away from her mother. A strange ball-like object in the yard catches her eye. She travels across the lawn on her small feet, arriving at the object and picking it up. It's shaped like a ball, but it has a weird cap on one end. Her parents finally notice her and come over, taking the device from her hand. George has no idea what it could be, but his oldest, John, who's now home on leave from the army, identifies it immediately. It's an incendiary grenade, a weapon specifically designed to start fires. This would explain the thump on the roof right before the fire began, as well as the rolling noise that came afterward. It also supports what the Sodders have suspected all along, that the fire started upstairs and not in a downstairs fuse box, as the police investigation determined. The Sodders are bewildered by this new evidence, but confident that it'll finally convince local law enforcement to investigate the fire as an arson case. But surprisingly, the police do no such thing. Military weaponry found at the scene is evidently not convincing enough. But even still, other jaw-dropping evidence continues to pour in. That same year, a pair of women reach out to the police. They claim to have seen the Sodder children alive. One of them, who works at a roadside restaurant hours outside of Fayetteville, says she saw them the morning after the fire. She served them breakfast and also noticed a car with Florida license plates parked outside. The other woman, who works at a hotel in Charleston, West Virginia, says she saw 4 of the 5 children check in around midnight a week or so after the fire with a group of unfriendly adults who spoke Italian. When the Sodders learn of this, it sparks an array of conflicting emotions. There's joy because their kids might still be alive, but new horrors too. What if their kids were taken by fellow Italians as revenge for George's anti-Mussolini views? If that's true, the children could be back in Italy, thousands of miles beyond the reach of the police in West Virginia. By this point, the Sodders are beyond frustrated with the lack of results from law enforcement. For the past year, it's been one staggering revelation after another, yet the local police are behaving as though the faulty wiring explanation still holds water. The Sodders recognize that they must appeal to a higher authority, and so in 1947, they write to the FBI. They receive a response from FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover himself, but it isn't good news. Hoover maintains that this case is a local matter, and that the FBI has no jurisdiction. But even still, the Sodders refuse to be stonewalled, and in 1947, they hire a private investigator to get to the bottom of it. As the PI questions various people around Fayetteville, he keeps hearing one particular rumor again and again. That Fire Chief Morris himself, the man responsible for responding to the fire, discovered a human organ in the ashes. It's a bizarre and potentially major revelation. On Christmas Day, the firefighters claim that there was absolutely no trace of the children's bodies. But this rumor, conflictingly, implies that they did recover human remains and hid the evidence. Even stranger, it's been said that they placed the organ in a wooden dynamite box and buried it somewhere on the property. It's a strange story, and the PI doesn't quite know what to make of it, but he hears it from so many people that he's compelled to tell the Sodders about it. Right away, the family rushes back to the scene of the fire, and thereafter, they begin digging.
It does seem longer.
It's painful to disturb the flowers they planted in honor of their lost children, but they'll do anything to learn more about what happened. And soon, sure enough, one of their shovels hits something. It's wooden, hollow. George, Ginny, and their surviving children gather around
I
as the
believe
box is
this,
uncovered
Lisa.
and hoisted to the
Absolutely.
surface. It's a dynamite box, just like their PI said it would be. Collectively, they hold their breath as the lid comes off, and inside, as promised, is an undeniable lump of dried and shriveled flesh. Resultingly, a local funeral director is brought in to examine the contents. But they're even more confused than the Sodders are, because it's not a human organ. Rather, it's beef, a beef liver to be exact. And even stranger, it's not even burned.
And how do you
At their
forget
wits'
that?
end, the Sodders decide to confront Fire Chief Morris face to face. And once pushed, Morris makes an astonishing confession. Except, it's not a confession to some sinister conspiracy. Rather, he states that he was only trying to help, but made a mistake. Morris states that he's certain that the kids died for the process was too much for him to bear. And so Morris says he did something very unorthodox. He got a hold of some beef liver,
Oh my
put it in the
God.
box, and buried it at the site. He then planted the rumors himself in hopes that the Sodders might hear of it and dig up the box. From his strange, distorted point of view, he thought that this might be enough to get the Sodders to believe. And it gets even stranger. When the Sodders go to retrieve the liver from the coroner,
I'm so happy
they
you're
find
part of
that
my
it's
family, too.
disappeared from his office.
Amen. Woo! Thank you.
But even as
Lisa.
this line of inquiry fails, another rises. The PI has one more lead to pursue, and it's perhaps the most promising. In 1947, the family's PI investigates one final lead in his search for the missing Sodder kids. He's curious about George's former business associate, Nick, who George fell out with over politics. The one who furiously made the bizarre claim about their house going up in smoke. George tells the PI that Nick was actually his employee at one time. They were close enough that when George needed a cosigner for an insurance policy on his home, Nick was willing to step in. However, they stopped talking after their fights over Mussolini. The PI secures a copy of the insurance policy, and shockingly, it's been updated since when George last saw it. As it turned out, Nick had increased the amount on George's home insurance by $250 right before the fire without telling George. It seems odd that such a move would even be possible without George's consent, but it does mean that, as a cosigner, Nick might have benefited if the entire Sodder family died in the fire. But that isn't even the most damning detail that the private investigator uncovers. As it turned out, Nick didn't just stand to benefit from the fire. He was actually a member of the coroner's jury that ultimately ruled the fire as an accident. Now, this fact is incredibly bizarre. A coroner's jury is made up of random citizens, like any jury, but their job is to look at the evidence presented in a mysterious death and determine if foul play was involved. Nick should not have been a part of this based upon his relationship to the family alone. And on top of that, as someone who could have benefited from their deaths, he's an obvious suspect. And yet, he was on the very jury that could have recommended he be investigated. Armed with this information, the Sodders go to the local prosecuting attorney and demand that Nick be investigated. It would seem like they had a decent case, but to their horror, the attorney looks at the evidence, then back to them, and politely states, "I don't want to bring a case against people with whom I live and eat." The Sodders are bewildered by this response. They're certain they're the victims of arson. Their kids are either dead or kidnapped, and they have strong evidence suggesting who did it. On top of this, there's evidence suggesting that there was misconduct among the coroner's jury. And now the prosecutor is refusing to do his job. Is this man in on it? Is he a part of the pro-Mussolini elements in town that wanted to see his family burn? Has Nick paid him off? What secrets is this West Virginia community keeping from its own members? Years pass. It's 1953 now, nearly 8 years after the fire, and the family is out of ideas. All that's left to them is to take out a billboard on the side of the road near their house. It features pictures of all 5 children, and it reads, "What was their fate? Kidnapped, murdered, or are they still alive?" With a $5,000 reward offered for information. Over the next decade, George and Jenny frequently received letters in the mail from all over the country, with people claiming to have seen one of the children. They chase every lead, no matter how tenuous. Once, George sees a picture in the newspaper of a little girl who lives in New York. He thinks she looks like one of his missing daughters, and so he goes all the way there and demands that her parents let him see her. Unsurprisingly, they refuse. Yet, in his mind, he believes that they could be the beneficiaries of the kidnapping. But at the same time, it's just as possible that they're frightened parents with no reason to let a strange man see their daughter, and ultimately he has to respect their wishes and return home. Jenny also pursues some rather thin leads with a similar level of aggression. She recalls the woman's testimony from the roadside motel, the one that claimed to see the children taken away in a car with a Florida license plate. As it turns out, Jenny has a brother who lives in Florida, and she gets it into her head to call him to see if he had anything to do with the alleged kidnapping. It's unclear why she would suspect this of her own brother, but she actually has the police produce records to prove that all of her brother's kids are his own. 1966. 21 years since the fire. By this point, the Sodders are searching for children who have, officially, been dead longer than they were alive. But the leads don't stop, so neither do they. That year, the family received a letter from a woman who writes that she overheard 2 men talking to each other, evidently claiming that they were Louis and Maurice Sodder. George travels to Texas to meet with them. However, the lead goes nowhere. A year later, in 1967, the Sodders receive another mysterious letter. Enclosed is a photograph of a young man with the same features and complexion as the men in their family. And sure enough, on the back of the photograph, there's a note that reads, "Louis Sodder." But this letter didn't come from Texas, it came from Kentucky, but without a return address. No means of contacting the sender. And so, the Sodders hire yet another PI to go to Kentucky to find out what he can. But once the PI travels to Kentucky, the family never hears from him again. Perhaps he was just a con man who took the Sodders' money and ran. Or maybe it was something darker. Regardless, his disappearance is a final gut punch, because that is where the trail runs cold for the very last time. And so, we're left to grapple with the same questions that tortured the Sodders themselves. It is, of course, possible that the children simply died in the fire. Maybe all 5 bodies really were incinerated. Or maybe the firefighters just didn't search thoroughly enough to find what remained. But an accidental fire burning hot all night doesn't explain the many contradictions and lies embedded in the evidence. It seems at least possible that their kids were kidnapped. Yet, in some ways, it might be less chilling to believe that they all died in that fire. Grief can do strange things to a person. By not accepting the deaths, Jenny and George became their own tormentors. As horrifying as the death of a child can be, there's nothing more terrifying than the unknown. Not accepting the simplest explanation meant that they forced themselves to imagine the worst. forced themselves through years of false leads and disappointment, and led themselves to hurl terrible accusations at both strangers and family. The unknown. That is what ruined their lives. Not the fire, not the loss, just simply not knowing. The Sodder children stared down from their billboard on the highway, asking every driver who passes, what was our fate? Thank you all so much for listening. If you'd like more to hold you over until the next video, 7 more mysteries await you.
So, yeah, that happened. I believe 7 hours. Man, 7 hours to get there. What in the world? I was just actually hearing that. Now I can't get my banner off. I was just hearing that when they said that. So that was kind of strange. That makes me think all that was kind of set up by people, and that's just my opinion. Do I think they perished? That's hard to say. What do y'all think? I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's very possible. But then I think, well, why did the fireman, the chief, bury that? Why? I don't understand that. He knew. Hold on. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Okay. But yeah, I don't know, man. But I know one thing that I do know for sure is that was some weird stuff going on. And why would they literally, hold on a minute, I'm getting a text. Hold on 1 second. Hold on, y'all. Okay. So yeah, I'm fixing to wrap this up. But yeah, I just wanted to tell you, I don't know, that was a weird, that was a weird case. And on Christmas morning, people should be happy. They should be filled with laughter, joy, and wrestling with unwrapping presents and stuff like that. And it should be a day of magic, but not these Sodder children, right? I don't know what's going on with that. I think that it could be, mafia could be involved. Could be. But that was December 25th, 1945. And it's something y'all can go into and really look into, because I think it's an interesting case. It is so sad. Hey, Seth. Good to see you, honey. Yeah, we're just going over this case in 1945. And guess what we found? Well, we were going through it. It's kind of in the middle of it. But we were even finding out, I'll just tell you this, we were even finding out that way back when, these parents never gave up on their children. It's a sad case. You kind of probably have to go back to touch on it, but it's mystery, mafia, and all the things. But even way back then, in 1945, they would not, FBI, they asked FBI to come in, and FBI refused theirself because of a local, the local matter and stuff. So yeah, that was just, I was like, well, I will be. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm just finishing up here, and this is crazy. It could be mafia, and then the people could have just been like that letter that they got. That young boy could have sent to his mama telling him he loved his brothers and sisters, but she felt she didn't want to put him in danger, right? So there's that. But I just want to tell y'all, I thank you for coming in. Study this. This is very interesting when I come across it. It really is. It was really interesting. Well, you go eat your supper, Tears Ran Dry, and I will talk to y'all in a bit, and y'all have a good night, and I'll see you in a little bit, okay? Love you all. Bye.